So one statement that our opponents have, and I would like to build on, is that the public should be aware of what they eat, and that's why genetically modified foods should be labeled. But in reality, consumers don't understand what GMOs really are. There was a study done in 2001 named Determinants of Consumer Attitudes and Purchase Intentions with regard to genetically modified food. And in this study, it was concluded that attitudes toward genetically modified foods are quite strong, despite their lack of basis in actual product experience. Likewise, the strong relation of product-specific attitudes to the attitude towards using genetically modification in food production suggests that at present, consumers reject the technology overall rather than they evaluate products on a case-by-case basis. So this shows that people don't like GMOs because they have been misinformed about the technology employed to create them. But in reality, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has tested all the GMOs on the market to determine whether they are toxic or allergic, and they are not. So these products have already been tested and they don't cause any problems. So people need to be more educated before mandatory labeling laws begin to be passed. Because as of right now, there are many disadvantages related to the mandatory labeling law that our opponents are proposing. So now let's look at the disadvantages and workability of this mandatory labeling policy. I already stated that the public is not very informed about GMOs, and the information that they have is mostly not proven to be true. So by labeling GMOs in California, California would only add to the controversy introduced in Scientific American of deciding whether we will continue to develop an immensely beneficial technology or shun it based on unfunded fears. As stated in an AG Bio form, if there are no real differences between products that use or do not use the technology, the label may not be useful to consumers, or could actually be deceptive and may unnecessarily impede adoption of the technology. So as we might know, the general public is usually not very informed about a lot of controversial subjects, and surprisingly, people who should be better informed, like high school science teachers, for example, are not informed on the subject and reject genetic modification of foods without even trying to research on their own about it. So if these educated people judge the technology without even trying to understand it, and they have the resources to do so, then the general public would completely shun the technology, because anti-GMO groups have been spreading fearful messages about GMOs. And once we put labels on those products, people would interpret the labels as warnings against something that is dangerous when it is not. Also, if we label genetically modified foods, we would just intensify the misconception that the so-called frankenfoods endanger people's health, when this isn't true. And to add to this, our opponents mention studies that say that the general public wants to have labels on genetically modified foods, and this is true. But according to the St. Louis Post, studies have shown that 90% of Americans say that they want GMOs labels on their food, but other information suggests that consumers don't pay much attention to the labels. In the 60 countries that currently mandate labeling, labels have barely altered the buying habits of consumers. Also, if our state did make this policy work and this mandatory labeling laws did pass in California, consumers would have to pay the price to label the GMO products. First of all, mandatory labeling of the use or non-use of GMOs serves the consumers, but at a higher cost in that the entire market must be segregated and labeled, even though only a portion of producers and consumers care about the attribute. So based on these considerations, the cost of food products would increase greatly, and farmers will be affected the most, because now they are able to grow more products faster and without having to struggle with droughts or shortage of supplies, and the change in prices would affect their work. For example, a study done by Lester Williams, a professor at the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management at Cornell University, demonstrates that as part of the new requirement to label meat products by country of origin, the Department of Agriculture estimated annual labeling costs as between $17 and $47 million for 121,350 50 unique labels. The estimated food SKUs, which must be relabeled, that represent relatively 17 and 21% of the annual labeling and related costs. Not only that, but the same study showed that if the labeling law is passed, the annual responsibilities will involve testing and conducting audits, the ones that would have to be paid by consumers of the products, whom would see an estimated annual median increase of $348 to $401 in California for a family of 4. So mandatory labeling does not only have to do with allowing people to know what they are eating, but it also has to do with families that would have to pay the price for labeling GMOs, and most of these families don't even care if they are eating genetically modified foods to start with. At a larger scale, if mandatory labeling policies pass and the prices of the products go up, states like Hawaii would be greatly affected because, as stated by Lawrence Servo, Executive Director of the Hawaii Food Industry Association, GMO labeling requirements will likely drive up Hawaii's already high food prices. Mainland and foreign manufacturers, if forced to label, may also choose not to ship products to Hawaii, given the state's relatively small consumer market. And if negatively affecting our small states is not enough, the cost would be imposed on the whole food system, not just the concerned about the issue. According to Dr. Byrne from Best Foods Facts, the U.S. food system infrastructure is currently not capable of segregating GMO and non-GMO ingredients and products. The restriction on GMOs in the form of labeling will likely discourage investment in future development of GMO crops variety. This will be unfortunate because for certain traits and crops, GMO technology might be the most environmentally beneficial and cost-effective solution to a problem such as drought stress or insect